Hello out there, and today we're going to be taking a look at two models from TRM, which is Three Rivers Manufacturing. What we have today is the Atom up top, and then the smaller version, which is called the Neutron. And these are two models that have been extremely popular since they've come out. There are a lot of people in the EDC community, a lot of reviewers who swear by these knives and say that they are some of the best EDCs, just period. And I have been interested in them a little bit since I first heard of them. But a lot of times with these smaller manufacturers, when they come out and, they're up and coming, they sort of fly under my radar for a while as I'm, usually paying attention to some of the more mass-produced sorts of things. And so it took a little while for me to really like develop some interest and buy into all the hype and want to get my hands on these. And first of all, guys, I have to thank my buddy Greg for sending these my way to check out. Greg's the guy who also sent me the ProTech Malibu that I reviewed about a month ago. He sent me these two and some CRKTs from the past as well. So it's very cool of him because, just with the way things are now, I don't always have the budget to spend a lot of money on a knife that I'm not 100% sure of. And so these knives coming in at around like $189 and $182, I probably was never going to get if it wasn't for him. So thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to get these in hand and see what all of the fuss was about here. When it comes to these two knives, there is a lot of really good stuff to say about them and not much bad. So I'm sorry if I'm towing the line and just agreeing with everybody else, but I do like these knives. And I think that one of the two of them might end up on my list to pick up long term. But let's get started with some size comparisons, talk about some of the characteristics of this knife, these knives that give them a pretty unique identity and make them a very cool thing to be able to get your hands on. All right, so when we're taking a look at the sizes, and I think what we'll do is we'll just spread out a little bit here and move Plo Koon up to the top. I don't know if you know who Plo Koon is, but he was a badass Jedi before he died. So we'll spread them out, and you can see the tips are lined up, so we'll bring in some other knives. Here's the PM2, which is a more suitable size reference for the Atom, coming in about ½ an inch longer overall, but a pretty similar cutting edge. And here's the bug out, which sort of compares in the middle to these two knives. The Neutron is a little bit shorter overall than the bug out. My favorite comparison though is, you guessed it, the mini grip when it comes to the Neutron, because there's a little bit of a difference in length, but the cutting edge is really similar, and you do get an extra push of handle here, so the ergonomics on this knife are going to be pretty darn good. So the steel that we're using on both of these knives is CPM 20CV. If we're just going to start with the blades, we've got what I think is an extremely useful blade shape. And more than that, a very nice finish and a good quality steel. There's a lot of, I'm not going to say like extra detail, but you can just tell by looking at one of these knives that there's just a lot that goes into it and that the blade is just done really well. I really like actually the fact that we're not talking about lasers here with the markings, that it's actually like engraved or stamped into the metal. I'm not exactly sure about these processes, but yeah, I mean, it just looks good. The finish, while like I said, you can't really tell till you see it in person, the finish is just very classy. And yeah, the blade shape is going to be good for all of your basic EDC tasks. So, these knives have their own identity. They don't really look like 100% like anything else that's out there, but they're super functional. So I definitely appreciate that. As we move on back a little bit, we don't have jimping on any of these knives, but we do have just a super ergonomic feel. And these knives are very thin. We're going to talk about the scales at length in just a bit, but the knives are very thin, and that gives them a very low weight. With the smaller one, the Neutron here, let's bring this in. The Neutron is almost like bug out weight, 2.17 ounces. And so my bug out with the Rogue Blade Works scales, if I can find that again, I don't know how I lost it when I just had it, but 1.98, I think the regular bug out's right around 2 ounces or 1.9, something like that. So You know, this one at 2.18 is pretty fantastic, really light. You can see that we have the full liners here. What I will say, and I guess I'll just get into this now, is that there is a Neutron 2 that has come out, and this is the Neutron 1. But the Neutron 2 is going to mirror some of the characteristics that the Atom has, with, I think it's going to have inset liners instead of these liners here where you know, you can see them with the scales just pushed on the outside. And I'll talk more about that a little bit at the end, and when it comes to my preference, how that actually might not be a good thing. But the weight though is super agreeable. When you talk about the weight of the Atom, again, we're just very, very light across the board. 2.89 ounces for a knife that's this long. So just for comparison, that PM2, 3.87. So when we take a look at it though, I mean, you can really see it's a pretty thin knife. And look at the gap between the scales. It's it's almost all scales here because we have the inset liners. So yeah, we're not dealing with a lot of extra weight in any capacity. So this is a very lightweight EDC. It's not going to be a hard use EDC, although I'm sure if you needed to, it would probably get a job done in a pinch, but it's more just an all-purpose person's knife, you know? And the thing that I really like about this company, from what I've seen on their website, is that they say that. They don't say that this is going to be your beater knife. You know, they say, hey, this is meant for, you know, some of the lighter tasks. It's not one that you're just going to be able to destroy things with, but it's going to get all the stuff you need done on a daily basis. And really, when it comes to an EDC, that's my philosophy in general, you know? So if you are someone who's looking for just a tank kind of knife, obviously this isn't going to be the thing for you. Like I said, in a pinch, it could perform, and it probably will just because the construction is very solid, but that's not really the intended purpose here. And so when I'm thinking about the things that I look for in a knife, like that philosophy is pretty much perfect. And, you know, you're looking at these scales, and we're going to get into all the different options for scales in just a minute, but when you look at them, you've got this classiness where, yeah, like if you get this knife, it's your all-purpose EDC. It could be your gents knife. It could be a ton of different things, legal just about everywhere, depending on, you know, what your cutting edge rules are where you are. But you can see it's sub 3 inches. So, I mean, versatility in terms of what you're looking for, definitely. So, very good stuff there. All right, let's continue to talk about the features of the knife here. So we have these thumb studs, which are unique to this brand as far as everything that I've ever seen. And there have been a couple times opening this knife, both of them, where because they're so low, let's see if we can get that focused. Because they're so low, sometimes my thumb will slip over them, but it's not difficult to actuate at all. It's just something that absent-mindedly, sometimes I've slipped. But that also means that the detent is pretty good. So when you break the detent, the knife flies open really well. We'll talk more about action as well. But yeah, I like the look of them though. Again, like the look of the thumb studs is a big plus. And then as we move back, let's get into the scales. So the scales here are a really neat thing. And what I like about this company and some of these smaller companies, I think American Blade Works does something similar as well. But, you know, so often now, you buy a knife, and one of the big things is let's customize it. Let's find an aftermarket, you know, an aftermarket company to make a set of scales, and, you know, or you get a sprint run and you don't like the color and you want to get a different set of scales, something like that. And so you have to pay all this extra money and find someone who can make the ones that you want, yada, yada, yada. And Benchmade's done a great thing with being able to customize the bug out on their website. But what I'm getting at here with TRM is that on their website, they have secondary scales for sale. So you can just buy them right then and there, and they're actually pretty inexpensive. So you sort of deck out your knife the way that you want it to be. And so there's a lot of really, really good options. When we're taking a look at these two models though, I will say there's one set of scales here that I just don't care for. And it might be because of the way the knife is constructed, and I'm not 100% sure of that because I haven't handled multiples. But I don't really care for the micarta here on the Atom. So I don't know if it's a matter of the micarta itself. You know, you can see, you might be able to see it's not like perfectly even and symmetrical like right here. and it just looks a little bit rough in a couple spots. But it's also just like not really my thing. I think there's this micarta push in the community right now where it's like super popular. Everybody loves micarta. They want micarta on everything. And while I like micarta on a number of knives, it just doesn't necessarily like, it's not the be all end all for me. So, and then the other thing with it is it just seems weird that, you know, you see how small these standoffs are here. It just seems weird that the liners are nested. And so you're basically talking about almost all scale on the backside. It just has a strangeness to it that I'm not a huge fan of. Now, I don't know if that's, again, because they're nested and that's just like the thickness of this particular scale or something like that, or if that's how it is with all of the different scales that you have options to get, because I think they have carbon fiber, they have G10, yada, yada, a bunch of different things. So again, not my favorite, but certainly not a deal breaker. But, you know, there's the contrasting, the contrasting aspect is that, like, this is not my favorite because I absolutely love these wooden scales on the Neutron. I really like that the liners aren't nested here. You know, it just gives it something. It gives it that like visual pop. It gives it just a little more spacing as you take a look at the back and you see the standoffs here. So the Neutron 1, while the Neutron 2 might not have this, I don't know, maybe the Neutron 1 would be preferable. And maybe I'll have to do a follow-up video if I ever do get a Neutron 2 in hand. But yeah, taking a look at these wood scales, you can see all the markings, you know, all just like the imperfections in the wood, which is super cool. And like you can feel them, you know? So it just gives the knife so much more character, and it like sort of harkens back to like a more traditional kind of feel with the knife, and it just adds so much again to that gents aspect of this being just a very super classy EDC. The color is excellent. The fit and finish here is really good. So yeah, I'm a big fan of these scales on this knife. All right, as we continue to move on back, what you will see is two different pocket clips. I'm not 100% sure if this came from factory or if it was customized. It's a pretty cool looking clip, and it's a good clip. I will say, again, with that Neutron 2, that I think they're moving to a deep carry clip like this on that new version. So definitely keep that in mind. As you can see, it's reversible. I don't know about the Neutron 2 being reversible because you can see this atom right here isn't. But again, I think that is something that you can customize in terms of like with your scales and the other purchases that you make. So there's, you know, a lot more ability to make it your own if needed. All right, let's just take a look at these two knives from the back, and maybe you'll see what I was talking about and just how, you know, this versus this. I'm definitely more of a fan of just like the lines and the profile of this knife versus this. So there's that. But as far as the clips go, they both carry well, zero issue. Certainly with a deep pocket being the trend, this is a pretty good clip to go with. I do like the color here, so we do have all that. So as far as build quality and action and lockup, with a knife, with knives like these being so light, I always just have that natural reservation that, man, it's just possibly not going to be the strongest knife to use, and I'm gonna, you know, have some anxiety if I'm trying to like do a lot of work with them. Again, what they're meant to be, they're not meant to be these like heavy duty work knives, but I mean, they're built very solid. So very solid, very strong. The liner lock here is good. The action on these knives, you can see that drop shut. And I mean, it's sort of hard to get a knife this light to drop shut really well. And so I have an appreciation for that. Yeah, action, very good. Lockup, good. Centering on both of these knives, pretty darn good as well. So while they say on the website, not really going to be your beater, I'd have a lot of faith in this being able to be very functional, maybe beyond its intention. One other thing I wanted to talk about, and it's a big difference between these two knives, and it's one of the things that makes me really prefer the design for the Atom, is that there's a difference in the way that the blade terminates and heads into the scales, and where the scales sort of lip out here on the Neutron. And again, I'm not sure if this is going to be a feature on the next version of it, but if you take a look at the Neutron here, you see where this scale ends, it sort of keeps you from being able to choke all the way up into this like ricasso, choil area, whatever you want to call it, right? So ergonomically, it's super comfortable and the scale isn't slick, so you definitely have that going for you, but you can't really stick your finger here. You know, it's not really going to be great in that capacity. It's going to be great like this, going to be great like this, you know, great in a number of different ways. But one of the things that is a very neat feature on the Atom is that if you take your finger right here and sort of run it down, you have almost a smooth line all the way down. So when you're using this knife, you know, and you're actually cutting stuff with it, you can adjust constantly, and like your forefinger can go in any spot all the way down. So choking back, choking up, you don't really have to worry about, you know, there being a big ridge where you're going to have a hot spot. Like any way that you want to hold the knife is going to be pretty darn good. So that is a really cool feature. And just for comparison, like bringing in the PM2, you know, you can see with like the forward choil, you know, you're holding the knife like this. I guess you could do it, but you've got that bump, that lip, I guess. And, you know, most knives with these choils like that are going to be that way. So you sort of have a forward choil on the Atom that isn't actually a choil. It just it just lets you run the whole way. And, you know, taking a look at like, here's the Hogue Deca. You know, it's a perfect example of how you just have this space where, you know, your finger's really not going to want to be. So the Atom lets you get really close to the blade for fine detail work. I like that a whole lot. When it comes down to picking one of the two, I really think that if I was going to get one of these models, that I would go with the Neutron. Neutron being a smaller knife. A little more dense though, you know, it's smaller and it is lighter, but it has a little bit more density for what it is. In knives that are a little more full size, you know, I sort of expect more out of them. And even though, like I've said a few times already, this could probably outperform its intention, I still would rather in a knife this large, you know, 3.25 inch cutting edge, have something a little bit more substantial, maybe something a little bit thicker. You know, not to dispel the strength of the knife, but just a preference. You know, and I think when I look at the Neutron, for this size, it is pretty much close to perfect in terms of weight and how it feels. So these knives, like I said earlier, guys, are not cheap. They are 100 and what did I say? 197 and 192, I think, on the website. Also, unfortunately, they're out of stock. They're hard to come by. You know, they're low batch, quick run kind of models that you get your hands on one. That's awesome. And if you miss it, then you're going to be waiting for a while to get one. What I can say is that if you like the design, you've got your choice of scales. You've got your way to customize it and make it your own. I think that this is pretty much going to be a home run for a lot of people. And this, for me, really what I think about is the person watching this or the person looking for just one knife, one nice knife that's going to really resonate with them. And yes, we come across that one knife often on this channel, that one knife that could be the knife. But I think that this one could really, really fit that for some people. And as far as the price goes, yeah, it's expensive, but if you look at the other stuff that's out there now, Spydercos and Benchmades, some of those are USA made, some of them aren't. Some of them are 20 CV, some of them aren't. So, I mean, we have value when it comes to the ability to customize. We have value in the materials. We have value in the build quality. We have value in the fact that it's a small batch and you have something that is like a little bit special in terms of limited availability. I think that this really hits home for a number of people, and that explains to me why they've become so popular. So that's what I've got, guys. That's my take on the TRM Neutron and the TRM Atom. Thank you again to my buddy Greg for for sending these my way. They will be headed home soon, my friend. And any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. Also, guys, I'm not the biggest expert when it comes to these knives, so whatever details I missed or whatever stuff I might have gotten wrong, let me know. I'll pin that comment and make it easy for people watching this video to get some more information. All right, take care. Thanks for watching and have a good one.